In this video, I'm going to show you how to decorate this TikTok cake. Hi, it's Karolyn. If you want to learn how to bake and decorate amazing cakes, then I would love for you to join me by hitting subscribe and the bell. If you want to get right into the video, there are chapters linked below. So I'm going to show you how to decorate this TikTok cake. It's one of my most popular designs, and I am starting with my cakes already baked, filled, iced, and in the refrigerator. They are waiting to be decorated. I have videos showing you how I bake, fill, ice, and refrigerate cakes, and that will all be linked in the description. And also all of the tools that I use and all of the videos that I reference will be linked in the description as well. And if you are new to the channel, welcome. And if you have been here along my journey, thank you so much. I'm so grateful for you. I'm still having so much fun doing this for you guys. So let's get started. All right, I have a piece of non-skid pad underneath my cutting board so it doesn't slide around. I have an X-Acto knife with a wet paper towel that I can keep wiping it off on, a Dresden tool, and a little bit of water. And I rolled out hot pink fondant really thin. And as always, I mix some Gum-Tex, some Tylose powder. It's the same thing. I mixed it in with my fondant and roll it out, let it sit for like 20 minutes so the fondant can stiffen, and it's going to be so much easier to cut and work with. So you can see, like, it's not stretching, it's like holding its shape. That's perfect consistency. So I measured my cake and then I printed all these out the correct size. And I'm going to start with the heart. All these pictures will be linked in the description. So I'm just tracing that black outline, so there's kind of like a double heart on here. And I'm not pressing too hard with that tool. I just want to transfer the line onto the fondant underneath. And then peel it back, make sure the line transferred. And now I have an edible marker. Excuse the flashlight. I can't really see because my camera is directly over this fondant, so I needed a little bit of assistance here. But I'm taking a black edible marker and just tracing those lines that I made so it looks like the picture. I have the picture up on the left-hand corner for reference. And I'm just using the side of the tip. I'm not pressing down too hard with the marker. And then I'm just using my X-Acto knife and I'm kind of cutting in on an angle a little bit. I don't want to cut on the black line. I'm cutting just outside of the black line. Cut the entire thing out. And like always, anytime I cut anything out of fondant, I'm going to take my time to use my fingers and my tools to smooth my cuts. And let's realign that on the picture, set that aside. Now let's make this little TikTok symbol, which can be a little bit of a pain in the butt. So there are all these little pieces on here. I'm going to start with the pink. I'm tracing exactly on the pink lines. Do you see how tiny these are? It can be a little annoying to work with small pieces, but I'm doing the same thing. So I'm tracing all those pieces out, cut them out, smooth my cuts. And I'm doing the same thing for the blue pieces as well, keeping the picture close for reference. And then I did the same thing for the white. I traced it on there. I'm cutting it out, smoothing my cuts. And now I'm getting a little bit of water on the back. I rolled out this black fondant really thin. And again, all this fondant has Tylose powder mixed in with it. And I'm just realigning it with my tools. And then I'm placing everything together, like looking at the picture. I'm putting the blue parts where the blue goes, the pink parts where the pink goes. And these teeny pieces are really difficult to work with. But use your tools, use your fingers, get everything into the correct place. And then I'm seeing which circle cutter fits around there, and that looks pretty good. Trying to center it and cut that out and smooth my cuts. Perfect. Let's set that aside and start on this peace sign. So again, I have the white fondant and I am doing the trace, cut, and smooth technique for this as well. And now I'm carefully peeling that fondant away. There's still little pieces of fondant stuck there. So I'm just trying to remove them gently so I don't tear the fondant and just smoothing out my cuts with my tools. Now, when I'm tracing this blue, I'm tracing on the outside of the blue line and then I'm tracing along the white part. You'll see why in a little bit. So I'm tracing along the white and then the outside of the blue, along the white and then outside of the blue. I'm going to put an entire blue piece underneath here. It's just going to be so much easier. So trace that and then cut it out. And now for the pink, I'm doing a thin pink line. And this will make so much more sense when you see me put it together. But I'm tracing the pink lines and I'm going to cut them out and smooth the cuts. Now this will make sense as I'm putting it together. I have a black piece of fondant, getting some water behind it and put the blue part down. And I have the picture for reference close so I can put this down the way it is in the picture. So I'm putting the white part down, making sure that the blue part is sticking out on the left side. And then putting the pink pieces down, using my tools to get them in the right position. And I am cutting an even black border around the entire piece. And let's realign that and set that aside. Now let's do the same thing for the headphones. The black part of the headphones, I decided to do white on this cake, but the same thing, I'm tracing all those, it's like 5 pieces or whatever of the black that I'm tracing onto the white fondant. And then I'm going to cut them out and smooth my cuts. And let's set those aside. Now this part can get a little tricky. I'm doing the pink part. I'm looking beyond the black and figuring out where the pink goes. And this is a little difficult to explain, but just imagine what that big pink piece looks like without the black on top. So I just traced it and then I'm going to cut it out. You can see it makes sense once you see everything cut out, right? Now for this blue piece, I'm only cutting a thin blue line like I did before because I have the thicker pink piece. This will make sense as I'm putting it together, but you will see what it looks like as I'm cutting it out. Good. And now as I'm putting it together, I'm overlapping the blue on top of the pink, you see? So it fits together a little weird, but it all makes sense when it's all together. So I'm getting a little bit of water underneath all of the fondant. So I like to place the fondant down where it's supposed to go and then get water underneath it. That way I know it's in the correct position. And now let's get the white part on top as well. I like to set it down first, and then I'm going to pick it up and get some water behind each piece. And I like to use my tools just to get everything in the right position, make sure there's an even space in between all the white pieces, and again, cutting an even black border around the entire thing. And perfect. Let's put this in a plastic bag. I don't want any of these pieces to dry out, and I don't have enough cake dummies to dry them on, so I'm going to seal them in the Ziploc bag. And let's make the name. So I'm using the rest of that black fondant that I had rolled out, doing the same trace, cut, and smooth. This font is called Omni Black, I believe. I will link it in the description below. And once I cut them out, I like to realign them back on top of the lettering. That way it doesn't get distorted. And you don't see me do this, but I also put this in the Ziploc bag as well to store it so it doesn't get too dry. Now I want to show you how I make the curlies. I have a curly addiction, so cut a straight line and a wavy line on one side, wavy line on the other side, so they all come to a point. And then take a piece of it and wrap it around the Dresden tools, stick it on a cutting board, and do that a bunch of times. I don't know why I love curlies, I just do them all the time. And it's super simple and it makes your cakes look really festive. And you can see all the curlies that I made, and now I'm doing polka dots as well in all 4 of those colors. And I'm just going to set those aside to dry. And let's do the splatter paint. So this icing is solid. The cake is just out of the fridge. I have black, blue, and pink. The pink is Wilton Rose and Sugar Flare Claret, and the blue is Electric Blue. Everything will be linked in the description. I really thinned out this buttercream with some water and flick. You see I have all these cake box lids behind it because it more gets on the cake box lid actually than the cake. So I'm dipping the paintbrush in there and flicking it on there. And in between colors, I wash the paintbrush and completely dry it. It has to be completely dry so you don't splatter any water on the cake. And then continue dipping it in the blue and the black. Now I have a video that goes into complete detail on how I do this, and that will be linked in the description. But it's super fun. I do put a towel on my kitchen floor because it does get on the floor as well. But who doesn't love the splatter paint? Perfect, that looks good. I'm going to set that back in the fridge so that icing can get solid. Now I'm going to roll out the borders so that I have gray fondant. This fondant has Tylose powder mixed into it. Get a little cornstarch down, and I'm going to roll it a little wide before I roll it really long. And I don't have a cutter that is wide enough. I measured my cake and it has to be like 2.5 inches wide. So I'm cutting a straight bottom and straighten it with my ruler. And then this has to be like 2.5 inches tall. So I'm going to hold that 2.5 mark at the bottom and use my pizza cutter to just create this dotted line that I'm going to follow. And then cut along the dotted line. So I have a 2.5 inch tall piece of fondant. And now I'm going to use this ribbon cutter and I'm just going to put it to a thinner ribbon and just cut that out. That ribbon cutter will be linked in the description. And use my rulers just to straighten out these strips. Now I have some Rolcom Super Silver here. I'm just going to dump some of it, that doesn't sound really good, but I'm pouring some of it, well, that's the rest of the can, into that little bowl. And I have some lemon extract and just mix that together. And I'm going to do 2 coats of this. So starting with 1 coat and then let the lemon extract dry. And the extract dries really quick. So maybe 5 minutes later, I can go back and do a second coat and see how the second coat gets it really deep. I always do 2 coats when I'm doing this Rolcom Silver. Now get the cake out of the fridge. I'm going to stack my cake. So I do have a stacking tutorial. It will be linked in the description. So basically I'm measuring how tall my straws have to be and marking it with a marker, and then cut off the marker, get my straws into the cake, countersink the straws with a handle so I'm not touching the cake, make sure it's level, get some buttercream down. Cleaning my hands, guys. My hands are clean when I touch these cakes. And then I'm going to stack that on top. That icing is hard, so I'm not going to mess up those paint splatters. I dabbled the cake, and then I'm just filling in that little hole with some buttercream carefully so I don't mess up any of that splatter. Now I'm going to clean the cake board because icing always gets on that cake board. I don't know why, with a wet paper towel. And then get some piping gel around the entire perimeter, that's the right word, right? of the bottom and the top tier where the borders are going to go. And I'm going to start in the back and wrap this around the bottom tier. And where it meets in the back, get my X-Acto knife and cut it. And then press that seam together. Press it against the cake one more time for good measure. And I'm using my palette knife just to press that down and make sure that strip is even across the cake. And I'm going to do the same thing for the top one. Now when I'm pressing this one down with the palette knife, I have to be careful because I have that paint splatter everywhere. So I'm going really slow. Do you see how I'm pushing it down so that strip is meeting that pink part of the cake? Just making sure it's all even. Beautiful. Let's put that back in the fridge. Now I have to make the number topper, so I rolled out gray fondant. I want to have the black part gray on my number 9. So I'm tracing the black 9 onto the gray fondant with my Dresden tool. And then let's cut that out. Smooth my cuts like always. And I want to realign that back on that paper so it is in the correct position. And again, getting that super silver, and I'm going to paint the gray fondant silver, doing 2 coats again. Now I have some black fondant. You can see it's rolled out like a 1/2 inch thick. It does have Tylose powder mixed in with it. Flip that over and get water on the back of the 9. And carefully lay it down so it's in the correct position. Now this circle cutter is perfect size for the inside of that, so I'm going to cut that out, smoothing my cuts. It's a little jagged. Okay, that looks a little obscene, but I have to smooth it out. Now, anytime I cut anything out of thicker fondant, I make a shallow cut first. So I'm just sticking the tip into the fondant and creating this line that I'm going to use as a guide to cut the entire thing out. So it's just easier if I do the shallow cut first and then cut the fondant out. So I'm going to start in the middle, put the tip all the way down to the cutting board once I have that line created, and then use the line as a guide to cut this fondant out. Just doing it this way prevents the fondant from getting messed up as you're cutting it. And once I have it all cut out, flip it over, take my fingers and smooth the edges. And flip it back over and smooth it from the front. Now I'm going to trace the number 9 onto the pink and the blue fondant. You'll see why. Because I want to cut these polka dots out and I want them to have the correct shape. So what I'm doing, I'm getting a little water behind that and stick that down. Now look, I'm cutting out the part of the 9 where I want the polka dot to be, and then taking the excess piece off, get a little water on the back, and when I put it down, it has that curve to it, so it just fits on there perfectly. So some dots I do whole. See that one I'm doing on the curve of the inside of the 9, and then I place it down on the inside of the 9. I hope that makes sense. It's just so much easier when you cut them with the correct curve to them. Now, if I stick that skewer in there, you're going to be able to see it if I stick it up the middle. So I have to stick it in on an angle. And whenever I do skewers, I twist them in there and screw them in. I do not jab them in. If you jab them in, you're going to distort the fondant. So I want to stick it in where it's going to touch the cake. And then stick it, sorry, I'm out of frame, but I'm screwing it in there on an angle to get this skewer up there. And this is why I roll the fondant out thicker so I can get the skewer in, make sure it's not poking out the front or the back, and set that aside. Now let's decorate the cake. I got it out of the fridge, and here's everything in that Ziploc bag so it doesn't dry out. Gonna remove all of that, and let's hold this up, and this looks good here. So get a little piping gel around the perimeter, and then a little icing in the center. I don't know, I like doing icing and piping gel, whatever. And then let's stick that to the cake. And let's do the same thing for the heart, piping gel around the perimeter and icing in the middle. And you know what, for the peace sign, I'm just doing icing. So I don't know, you can use piping gel, water, icing. There's a lot of things you can use to stick decorations to cakes. This is just, I'm going between piping gel and icing. Now I'm measuring the Casey and that TikTok sign to see where the center is. The A is the center, so I'm starting with the A and I'm sticking it in the center of the cake. So I want everything to be center. And then I'm going to stick the rest of the letters down. Now you did not see me on film cut out that other TikTok sign, but I literally did it the same way that I did the other one. It's just the center of this one is black instead of white. And it doesn't have that circle background on it. So I'm just looking at the picture and making sure I put all of these colors in the correct position. And this piece is so tiny, I needed tweezers to get that in the right spot. Nice. Now I'm putting another toothpick in the bottom so that way it's not going to twist. Get a little piping gel down. Look, I cannot stick it straight in. The 9 is going to be tilted, so it has to go down on an angle. And I want to center this, so I'm sticking it down into the cake. Since I have that other toothpick, do you see how it's not going to twist? Get a little bit of icing underneath it and press it down so it really sticks. It's not going to move. I'm going to use a dry paintbrush and just remove that excess icing and wipe it on a paper towel. This icing is solid. The cake is solid, so I'm not going to mess it up. I'm cutting a bunch of those polka dots in half. And when I stick polka dots to cakes, I like to do halvesies. So I do half of it against the top. I do some full round ones, and then I do half ones on the bottom. So I don't know. I've always done polka dots that way. I just like the way it looks. And now I'm getting some piping gel on the bottom of the little curlies wherever they're going to touch the cake. And I try not to put two of the same color together. It's just the way that I do it. So I'm just randomly placing these on the top tier, the middle, and onto the cake board. And there is the cake. So cute. So there you go. How adorable is this cake? I really need to think of a new word other than adorable, but it really is so cute, and it's one of my most popular designs. I will put over here the other designs that I did, which are pretty similar to this. The first one I did with a silver glitter, and I have a video somewhere, I think I do it on a topper showing you, oh no, I do have it on a cake, showing you how I do a glitter effect on a cake. I will link that in the description. The next time that I did it, I did just pink and blue icing because she didn't want the cakes covered in fondant, so I did this design instead. And then for this one, I just wanted to do the paint splatter to give it a different effect. So I like all three of them. I just like to do something a little different every time that I make this cake. unless they ask me to do the same exact thing, and then I do the same thing. So this cake is 6-inch and 8-inch tiers, and it feeds like 30 to 30 people. So what new techniques did you learn in this video? Let me know in the comments below. Please like this video if you liked it, and if you are enjoying my tutorials, I would be so grateful if you would buy me a coffee. My link is pinned in the comments below. And you can keep in touch on socials and check out my website. Everything is listed in the description. And if you want to stick around, you can watch this video next and hit subscribe and the bell if you haven't already. Thank you so much for watching. I love you guys, and remember, it's cake. Have fun. I will see you on the next one. Bye.